I was urging my former colleagues and frankly speaking, the people on the Hill, it was more actually aimed at telling the Hill people, get as much information as you can, get as much intelligence as you can before President Obama leaves the administration, because I had a fear that somehow that information would disappear with the senior people who left. So it would be hidden away in the bureaucracy, that the Trump folks, if they found out how we knew what we knew about the Trump staff's dealing with Russians, that they would try to compromise those sources and methods, meaning we would no longer have access to that intelligence. So I became very worried because not enough was coming out into the open, and I knew that there was more.
All right, so joining us now is Larry Klayman, founder of Freedom Watch and former federal prosecutor. Hey, Larry.
Steve, how are you?
Good, thank you. All right, so what do you make of what you heard there from Evelyn Farkas, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, talking about how she was urging everybody to keep getting the information on the Trump people before they left office? What is that, a smoking gun?
Well, it's case closed, basically. I mean, we know what's been happening here. It's clear that the Obama administration, and I believe it will go to the president himself, these things can't happen unless Obama knew about it, that they were unmasking names in terms of intelligence gathering. But I think it's worse than that, Steve, even. And you know about a whistleblower that we have by the name of Dennis Montgomery, former NSA CIA contractor. I got him immunity. He went to the FBI. He was working right underneath Comey and his general counsel, James Baker, with two other agents, Walter Giardina and William Barnett. 47 hard drives, 600 million pages of information, and he gave testimony for 3 hours under oath. This has been buried for 2 years by FBI Director Comey. The surveillance is much broader than just simply the Trump team. Trump was surveyed when he was a businessman. So was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, 156 judges, other prominent businessmen, yours truly on multiple occasions. Everybody who was anybody. Steve, you might be in the database. It's being buried. And these intelligence committees, both the House and the Senate, don't want to confront it. I sent a letter to Chairman Nunes, and I'm hopeful that he will do something. On March 21st, I asked him for a response, sent it to the Democrats and the Republicans on that committee by the 24th, because we want to bring Montgomery in, because this is widespread surveillance. The potential to blackmail and coerce is huge. I don't know whether this happened or not, but did Chief Justice Roberts flip on Obamacare at the 12th hour because they had something on him, or he thought they might have? This is the risk. We live in an Orwellian state. Judge Richard Leon issued 2 rulings in cases that I brought against the NSA, Obama, and others, saying that this was illegal, Fourth Amendment, unconstitutional surveillance. It's a broader issue. So I hope that the listeners will contact those intel committees. The Senate Intel Committee seems to be a joke right now. They don't want to get into this. Nunes, I believe, does, but he's got big resistance, and they need to look at it. And it needs to be demanded that Comey cough up the information that Montgomery has had in his files to those committees, because it's much broader than even Trump and his team. But certainly, Obama was behind it. His people were behind it. It's a deep state. I'd say about 70% to 80% of the people in government are very sympathetic to the left, to the Democrats. And President Trump is basically, in effect, barricaded in the White House with no one else on his side, and in fact, very few Republicans. So David Horowitz is right about that, too.
And you wrote a great piece for Newsmax back on St. Patrick's Day. I urge everyone to go to Newsmax.com and search it. And Nunes must ask FBI's Comey about Montgomery mass surveillance case. Very important, as Larry just indicated. Let's move on. The mayor of Seattle, I guess the first now to fire a shot across the bow and sue against the recent Justice Department declaration that they'll withhold funding from sanctuary cities. You now have, if you noticed yesterday, a bunch of these mayors saying, we're not a sanctuary city. They're redefining it. They're describing themselves as a protective city, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, when Andy McCarthy was on Monday, I said, or whenever the day after Sessions made his announcement, I guess it was Tuesday, I had Andy, I said, if a state or city goes to court and sues, whether it's the Sessions declaration or Trump's intent to withhold funding, other funding from sanctuary cities, he said it's not a slam dunk that the government would win. These cities may win. What do you think?
Well, given the state of the judiciary today, and we talked about this on an earlier segment, Steve, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the judges on the lower courts were appointed by Bill Clinton or Obama. They're highly leftist, and we know that Washington State is extremely far left. And ironically, you know, they have a big Russian presence in Seattle, fishing fleets which spy on our submarines. I had a case years ago about that where a Navy lieutenant colonel, counterintelligence, was lazed by Russians who were surveying their submarine fleet that were spying on our nuclear fleet there. So this is a very leftist place. It's very possible that Seattle could win, but it's absurd. And as far as the law is concerned, it shouldn't happen. But we know that these judges will bend the law, and that's why we have a judicial selection coalition. People can see that at freedomwatchusa.org. And then California is even worse. You've got the state legislature, which is 99% Democrat, colluding with the city of San Francisco to boycott companies that, in fact, participate in the moratorium on the travel ban, which is related to all of these sanctuary city issues and everything else. That's actually an illegal boycott under antitrust laws.
Which, by the way, Larry, I don't want to let you go without this. We have a minute left. The judge in Hawaii now extending his order, solidifying it in effect, and basically telling the Trump administration, go to the Ninth Circuit. So, you know, you talk about these left-wing activist judges. He's another one, obviously.
Well, you know, it's interesting is that this judge is so way out. He's such a political hack, this guy Watson, that I think even the Ninth Circuit will reverse him. And despite the fact the Ninth Circuit is pretty far left, there are even some leftists on that circuit, like Judge Gould, Ronald Gould, who actually follows the law. So I don't think that this Hawaii hack judge, who happens to be a friend of Obama, former classmate at Yale Law School, I don't think he's going to prevail. But he's trying to make a name for himself. He's hoping that, you know, if the Democrats win the next election in 2020, he might be catapulted up to the Ninth Circuit or the Supreme Court. This is a complete political hack. That's all he is.
All right, Larry, always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much.
God bless you, Steve.
You too. Larry Klayman, ladies and gentlemen.